Okay, so we're ready now to make our petal pillow small project. So you will see there's a PDF download of the pattern for this um, project, and these are going to be the video tutorials that go along with that pattern. So you can choose to make either a skinny robin or a fat robin, 14.5-inch small project, raw block. The PDF and video tutorials are also available in this part of my website to make this block. I'm choosing to do a fat robin for this petal pillow. You'll also need a couple of freezer paper templates, a 14.5-inch circle template. You'll need this petal freezer paper template. The pattern is in the PDF download. Both of these I will show you how to make in these upcoming video tutorials for this small project. And then you're going to need a little bit of other fabric. You're going to need an 18-inch square of fabric that is going to become the petals that will sit behind our block. So those will become the petals of this flower. You'll also need a piece of interfacing, a non-fusible lightweight interfacing. I like to use Petal P45 that you can find at Joann's, just any lightweight, non-fusible interfacing. And then you'll need 3/4 of a yard for the pillow backing, so it'll be on the front. That's what the flower will sit on. And then also this will be the back of the pillow where the pillow form is inserted. It'll be a flap back. Okay, so I've already changed my mind on the background fabric. That's going to be the background square and then the overlapping back for my pillow. So I'm going to use this instead. And then you're also going to need, if you choose to do the bound edge, 2 full width, 2.5-inch strips. So you don't have to do this if you don't want the bound edge, and that explanation is in the pattern and will be in the tutorial. So that's what you need to get started. So when we get back, we'll talk about getting this raw block to size and then moving forward to finish this fun project. Okay, we're gonna make the freezer paper circle template. We need a 14.5-inch circle template to finish our block into this petal pillow project. So in your book, in the 3rd chapter, it talks about how to make a freezer paper template using the template sheet that comes in your book. The instructions are in the 3rd chapter, so if you're using the skinny book, it's in the light blue chapter. If you're using the fat book, it's in the purple chapter. You'll find the instructions on pages 2 and then continue to the top of page 3. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. I'm going to set these aside so you can see what I'm doing. So there are template sheets that come with your book and the ruler. There is one that comes in the fat book and one that comes in the skinny, and they're set up the same way. On one side are the circle sizes for finishing the outside diameter of your block, and then on the other side are for if you choose to do the circle centers. So it doesn't really matter which one you have, because we're going to use this left-hand side to get a 14.5-inch freezer paper circle. Now we're going to finish our block using the applique method. And normally for a 14-inch block, I would have you cut a 14-inch freezer paper circle. But for this project, we're trying to be forgiving, and we want to have a little extra room out beyond the finished point. So we're going to cut a 14.5-inch freezer paper circle. So to do that, the first thing you're going to need is a piece of freezer paper that's at least 14.5 inches all the way around. So I just cut a hunk off my roll that's about 15.5 inches. Then you're going to fold it in quarters. And you want to be pretty neat, mostly in how you are pressing the fold. You want to have nice, crisp folds, so we'll fold it in half. Then we're going to fold it in quarters. And when you fold it in quarters, you want to make sure that you have those folded edges matched up perfectly. This is how you're going to get a nice round circle when you're done. Okay, so I've got it. Crisp folds, right? Those folded edges are right together. Now we're going to open up our freezer paper and we're going to put those folded lines, the north and the west here, we're going to line them up on the vertical and horizontal line of your template sheet. Now you can see right through the freezer paper, so it's not a problem. I'm just going to take a minute to make sure that I've got those folds going right down there. All right, now I do. Okay, I can see my 14.5-inch line right there. So then I'm just going to come in and carefully trace that line. You just want to take a little time. The more accurate you are here, right, the better your circle is going to come out. All right, so I've got that drawn. Now we're going to fold the freezer paper back up. Just the way it was, get those edges together. All right, and on the folded side of those edges, to keep those edges together, because sometimes they can kind of slip on you, I like to just put a staple in there. So I'm going to grab my stapler, and I'm going to stick a staple right there in the end. Okay, so now that edge is not going to go anywhere. Now I'm going to cut out the curve, and I'm just going to hold my hand down on here. I think it works better if you have the paper down on your table, and I'm just going to come in here and carefully cut around where I drew. And just keeping it close. And all right, so I've got it cut. Now I'm going to take that staple out, and you will see I have a perfect 14.5-inch freezer paper circle that will be ready to use a little bit later in our project. All right, so now we've got our circle, freezer paper circle, and always a good idea to write right away what size circle that is so that you can know for sure when you're grabbing it. And also these circles can be used over and over, so you can keep this handy if you want to make more of these. All right, so we're going to use the same process we used to make the circle to make the petal template that is going to be used to make the petals that are going to go around our block. So in your pattern, and you've probably printed this out in PDF, so this is 2 pages, and you simply, I've given instructions here, but you just want to butt those pages up to one another. And your printer's not going to print all the way to the edge of the paper, so where it doesn't quite go, just fill that in. It's just like 1/4 of an inch. So you can just match up those 2 ends, and then you've got your template ready to trace. So this template's going to be almost 18 inches. So I basically cut an 18-inch square. I just got my roll of freezer paper that's 18 inches and then cut an 18-inch hunk. And we're going to do the same thing. We are going to fold this neatly into quarters. So I'm going to get it, because we're going to use most of the paper. I want to match up that edge pretty well. So make a nice crisp fold that way, and then we're going to match those folded edges up, make sure they stay together, and make a nice crisp fold the other way. Okay, same thing. We're going to take our pattern and we're going to place the freezer paper folds north, south here, and the east and west line right on those lines that are on the pattern. Okay, so once I've got that, Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to trace my petal shape. Okay, so I've got my petal traced. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this up. All right, and then I'm going to do that same thing where I am going to staple those edges together. All right, so now that's going to stay nice and flat for me. And now we're just going to come in here and cut out our petal shape. All right, I've got that cut. I'll take this staple out. And when I open this up, I have my petal template ready to go for my block. So we've got our templates cut. Now we can start working on getting our pillow put together. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to get our raw block prepared for applique, and we're going to prepare it using that 14.5-inch freezer paper circle that we made. I'm going to take just a minute here and also get this template set up so it will be really a lot easier to get it centered on our block here in a minute. So to do that, I'm simply going to place my 1/4-inch line on the edge of the paper and just make a little mark there. So I'm going to do that at the north, south, east, and west, and I've already done that. Folds, and then I'm just going to come in here, and where that mark is, I'm just going to fold the paper back right on that line. So basically I'm folding these back 1/4 of an inch, and that's, like I said, going to make it easier here in a second to get it centered onto our block. All right, so I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to take my raw block, I'm going to lay it face down. And the first thing I want you to note once you get it down is we have all these nice stitching X's at every point. So that's where the finished points are. The freezer paper circle that we made is actually a little bit oversized. So normally for applique, I would have you make a freezer paper circle that would just sit right at these points. But I wanted this project to be a little bit forgiving, so I added a 1/2 inch, so which means a 1/4 inch or so is going to be beyond these points when we're done, which will kind of make them float, and then you don't have to worry about everything being exactly perfect. All right, so to do this, we're going to take our prepared freezer paper here. I'm going to fold this back right at the 1/4 inch, and that vertical line should be right at the stitching X, and then make sure that same line where you fold the paper back is at the stitching X below, okay? Once you've got those two lined up, then you can just give a little press there at the top and bottom to hold that freezer paper in place for a second. And now we're going to line up our east and our west, and you can pull those, pull your fabric a little bit if you need to. Make sure things stay oriented east and west, so I'm happy there. So I'm going to just get those pressed in place. All right, then I can go ahead and press the freezer paper down. Make sure you press it well so that it's going to adhere. It's not going to be coming off on you. And this is going to be our friend here in a minute when we get this ready to prepare for applique. All right, so I've got that freezer paper on there. You can see it's not going anywhere. Now what I want to do is come in here and just cut off this kind of riffraff around the perimeter. And you can do it with scissors. I actually prefer to do it with my rotary cutter. So let me set this aside for 1 second. And I can just show you. So I just come around, and I want to leave quite a bit out there, and we've got plenty of room. We want to leave at least 3/8 of an inch. But we don't need all of that kind of riff-raffy stuff. All right, so I've got the riff-raff taken care of. So now all I need to do is come in and we are going to fold this edge around tight to the freezer paper. All right, so you want to make sure I'm using a dry iron here. I want to make sure my iron is hot, but I'm just going to pull that as tight as I can, and that's part of the reason I left extra out there. If I would have trimmed this to 1/4 inch, we'd be burning the heck out of our fingers, but I am not even getting close to the iron really. And I'm just leaving, as you can see, my iron down on the ironing board. I'm not lifting it up and down. I'm just going around, pulling that edge tight around the freezer paper. So you can see, I'll turn it over. You can see my points are all floating a little bit, and that gives it's a little forgiving, right? So now I'll just continue doing that all the way around the block. All right, so you can see now when I turn it over, we've got this nice pressed edge. So the first thing I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and take out that freezer paper. And this is the first time you use a piece of freezer paper, it'll be a little bit sticky. It gets less sticky the more times you use it, but there we go. So I'm going to take that out, and then I'm immediately going to take my pins, and I'm going to stick a pin basically at every point, all the way around, just to hold that pressed edge into place until we get ready to put this onto our petal piece that we are going to be making next. So I'm just going to finish pinning this around, and then we'll have it set aside for later in our project. All right, so now we're going to make the petals that are going to go around our block to make our flower. And I'm going to use a facing technique. I use this for my circle centers, and I use this in a lot of other patterns of mine to bring in some softer elements in a much easier way. So you're going to take your 18-inch square of petal fabric, and you're going to turn it over to the back. And we want to press this petal template on the back of our fabric. And we want to make sure that we get it centered on here. We want to have it about 1/4 inch left all the way around. So when I'm just checking that there, so once I am happy with that, I'm just going to press this on to the back of my fabric. And this petal template is the finished size. So that's why we need the 1/4 inch, because when I'm done sewing, we need a little bit of a seam allowance, right? When we're sewing this together. All right, so I've got this on there. It's not going anywhere. And this is when you're going to now take your piece of non-fusible interfacing, and you're going to put your petal fabric and template with it right sides together. Okay, so once I've got it on there, I make sure I've got interfacing all the way around. So I want to make sure to catch that everywhere. Then I am going to just use some pins also, just to keep the interfacing from getting folded under or something underneath. So I'm just going to pin at every point all the way around. And once I get this pinned, then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and all I have to do is sew all the way around this petal template. And because it's the finished size, I'm going to sew as close as I can to the freezer paper without actually sewing on the freezer paper. So that's what I'm going to go do now. Just going to start, and you need to go around the whole perimeter, okay, of the whole block. And I would back stitch at the beginning and end so that it will stay um, from coming apart on you later. So I'm going to go sew this and then we'll come back and I'll show you how we get it trimmed up, turned, and ready to move forward in our project. All right, I've sewn all the way around the perimeter, and I used kind of a darker thread than I normally would have so that you can see. So I just sewed around the freezer paper, but not on the freezer paper. So when I take these pins out, that freezer paper is going to come right off, and you should be able to see that petal or all the petals going around. The next thing to do is just to come in here and trim this to about a scant 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to go around here carefully. I'm just going to get it to a scant 1/8 first, and then we'll come back and talk about clipping the inside curves and the outside points. All right, so I've got it trimmed all the way around the perimeter. So now what I want to do to make it easier for turning is to come in here. I'm going to clip all of these inside points, and you want to be real careful. You want to get as close as you can to the stitching there, but do not clip through your stitching. If you do, go back and re-sew that because you don't want that to come apart. It's something that can happen, but you just want to take your time and get as close as you can to that stitching without going through it. So I'll just do a couple more here. And then once I get these inside points clipped, one more. Then the outside points, I just want to sort of clip them closer and kind of flat to kind of get rid of some of that bulk out there. So I'm just going to clip those off, and then I'll be ready to turn it. You don't want to get too close, but you just want to get rid of a little bit of that point so you don't have all that bulk, and then it'll be pointier when we turn it. Okay, so now we're going to clip or pinch up the back here, get the interfacing away from the fabric, anywhere here in the middle, and I'm going to make a little clip or a little hole, and then I'll just come in here with my scissors and make that bigger. And then I'm just going to turn this. And as I go around, I'm going to stick my pointer finger in there and my thumb, and I'm going to really kind of then push my thumb out. So I'm going to get those points to come out pretty good right from the get-go, okay? So I just have to do that 8 times as I'm going around. Push those out. Okay, so now I've kind of got those all pushed out. The whole thing opened up. All right, so now I need to get those petals nice and shaped the way that they're supposed to be. So I like to use a turning tool, something that's not too sharp. This has kind of just a little rounded end. I think this is like a painting tool. You could use a knitting needle, just something that's not too sharp. And the whole key to using this and getting this to come, the seam to come out to the edges, is to keep this on the fabric side of the seam. If you bring it up on the interfacing side, then you're going to be more prone to poke through that interfacing. But if you have this with the fabric side down on your table, and then you just run that under the seam, come out at the points, you can see that's coming out beautifully to the shape of our petal. Again, make sure you're on the fabric, the under part of the seam, not on the interfacing side of the seam. So I'm just going to finish going around here. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. When I turn it over, you can see my nice pretty petals. The other thing you can do is just kind of go around and you can just kind of roll these edges any place that you don't think that that's coming out all the way to the seam. Like here, I've got a little place. So you just kind of want to go around, take your time because you want a nice shaped petal um, to go around your block. So I'm just taking a look here, just rolling where I need to. All right, I think I'm good. Now we're going to press it from the back. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is you probably should turn your iron down a little bit. If your iron's too hot, you can melt your interfacing. So we don't want to do that. And then we're going to press from the back. And when we're pressing from the back, we want to make sure that we're ever so slightly pulling that interfacing to the back of our block because we do not want it to show on the front. So you can see I'm just ever so slightly just giving it a little bit of a pull as I go around. Being careful not to get my iron on there too long. I did turn it down, but I don't want to melt my interfacing. All right. So now I'm going to turn it over and give it a good look. Make sure I don't see any interfacing. And I'm going to press it from the front and just being very careful again. Just looking as I go around the block to make sure there is no interfacing showing on the front. So I think I've done a good job here. All right, so we've got this finished. When I come back, we'll talk about getting our prepared block that we prepared for applique on here and ready to move forward. All right, so now we're going to take our prepared block and we're just going to center it onto our faced applique petal. And because we put the pins in there already, all we really have to do is take the pin out and put it right back in. And it's really easy to get centered on here, right? Because these points are just going to be right at where the petals come together. And there should be just a little bit of space between that. It should be pretty close to where that comes in. There's a little bit of a gap. It's okay. Again, I've built a little room in here to make this pretty forgiving. I'm just going to pin this all the way around, and then once I get it pinned, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to edge stitch this on to the petal, to the petals. Move that. So I'm just making sure that's pointing out there. So sometimes you got to move it one way or the other. That's okay. We just want to make sure everything is nice and centered on there. There we go. Remember, we're working with fabric, so we are in charge. You can make it do what you want it to do and what it's supposed to do. Okay, so now I've got it all pinned on there. I'm just going to go edge stitch around the whole thing. Okay, so I've got it edge stitched all the way around the block. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of some of this bulk. So the fabric that is behind the compass sunflower block and that interfacing, I want to cut that out. So I'm just pinching up here away from the block, and I'm just going to make a little slit. And then I can just stick my scissors in here and go around and cut out all of that extra fabric. And the reason I pinch up in the side is so now I've got a whole circle here left over that I can use to do another project. So I will hang on to that circle here when I'm done. All right, so keep this circle for another project. Now I've taken out that bulk. What I want to do now is just give my block a quick press. Make sure everything's laying nice and flat. I'll use just a little moisture here and just get everything laying nice and flat, because next we are going to applique this on to the backing that will be the front of the pillow. Okay, so I'm going to grab my backing. So I actually fussy cut this fabric for the backing. So to get it on here, and let me get it in my happy place there, it would be pretty easy just to eyeball this, right? Just going by the motifs on the fabric. But if you have a fabric that is not, you know, fussy cut, that it's just, and you're wanting to find the center, so I'm going to fold my square in quarters, give it just a little press. You want to do this neatly so that you actually find the center, so get your edges together. And I'm not going to press a lot, I just want to get some folds in here. So when I open this up, right, then I will be able to clearly see where the north, south, east, and west is. Then I just have to get those parts on those folds, and I am instantly centered. All right, so once I get it centered and I'm happy with how it looks, and I am, I'm just going to pin it on there all the way around, and then I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to edge stitch next around all of the petals to secure it onto the pillow backing. So that background really makes those petals pop. This is going to be a fun pillow, I think. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and get that edge stitched, and we'll come back and we'll get the rest of the pillow put together. All right, I have my flower edge stitched on top of my pillow backing, so that's all done, ready to go. So now I need to make the backing that's going to form the pillow. So I had you cut 2 rectangles, so that is on your PDF download. Let me just move this out of the way. So basically what's going to happen are these are going to overlap in the back, and that's how you're going to slip your pillow form in. So we just need to finish these inside edges. And to do that, we're just going to do a simple 1/4 inch machine sewn seam. So on those edges, I'm first going to just press under a 1/4 inch, probably just a scant 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to press it one more time. And then I'm going to take it to my machine, and I'm just going to edge stitch down the edge of my fold here, along here. And I like to just use my 1/4 inch stitch, and I'm actually going to stitch on the outside. You do it however you want, but I'm going to do that to both edges, and then we'll come back and get this pillow put together. All right, so I've stitched a 1/4 inch over to secure these edges for the backing of my pillow. And now these are just going to cross over to create the back of our pillow, and it doesn't really matter which way they cross over. You can decide maybe by how it looks. I might go that way. And now we have some choices. So there's two ways you can finish this pillow. You can either just sew the backing and the pillow together now, turn it, stick your pillow in, and you are done. Or you can choose to do it so that it has a bound edge, okay? So I'm gonna do the bound edge, but let me just explain. If you are not doing the bound edge, you just wanna sew it together, then you're gonna put right sides together. And so I would put my pillow back, and then here where it overlaps, right? I'm just gonna move that over so it matches the pillow. Okay, then, and I would just make sure I get everything lined up really well. I would pin around here, sew my nice true 1/4 inch seam all the way around, turn it, and your pillow is ready to finish into your project. But again, I'm going to do the bound edge. So I'm going to turn these over and sew them wrong sides together because we're going to bind that outside edge. So again, those get crossed over in the back, and then we just want to make sure that everything is lining up. All right, so I'll take some time here and get this all lined up. I think I've actually got it. And then I'm going to just pin all the way around, getting those edges together, matched up. Make sure that you pin here where it overlaps so that those stay in place while you are sewing around there. So I'll just finish pinning this. I'm going to go to my machine, sew my 1/4 inch seam all the way around with the wrong sides together, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about getting it bound. All right, I sewed my 1/4 inch seam all the way around so my pillow is together. This is where the pillow form will go in when I'm done. But now I have this raw edge out here that I'm going to add a bound detail to. So the binding is 2 full width strips, 2.5 inches. Sew them together and then fold them in half. And then I'm just going to bind this like I would a quilt. So you'll leave an opening down here. We'll miter the corners. I'm just going to kind of lay this on here so you get the idea. But it's exactly like you would do if you were doing a quilt. So come around, and you should have enough to get those ends together. But I'll start sewing here, stop sewing here, and then I'll get those ends put together, finish sewing. And when I sew this on, I want to make sure that I'm using a fat 1/4 inch seam, right? I want it to be just a little bit wider than the 1/4 inch seam that I used to put these 2 layers together so that that will be covered. Once the binding is sewn all the way on, then of course it gets turned to the back. I will probably hand sew mine down, but you could also machine sew it if you wanted. So when we come back, I will show you my pillow top ready for the pillow form. All right, so the binding is sewn on. You can see how the back looks. And now all we have to do is insert our pillow form. So I have a 20-inch pillow form. And just gonna get it stuck in one side here. And then to get it in the other, you just kind of want to shove it down in there. And then push those corners out. Once you've got that done, get it unorganized, get those flaps crossed over each other neatly. And you have your petal pillow. Really going to be a fun addition. Throw it on my bed or my couch. So hopefully you've had fun making this small project, and maybe you'll try one of the others now.